The stars looked beautiful through the viewport of the meridian dawn. Captain Linda Hayes stood on the bridge, watching as her ship moved closer to the massive space station ahead. Kelvar 9 was one of the largest trading posts in this sector, a giant wheel of metal and lights floating in the darkness of space. Ships from dozens of different alien races came here to trade, repair, and refuel. Linda had been to Kelvar 9 many times before. The station was run by the Xinthian Consortium, a group of insect-like aliens who controlled several major trade routes. They were good at business, but not particularly friendly. Still, their prices were fair, and their repair facilities were among the best available. That was why Linda had brought her cargo ship here today. The Meridian Dawn needed maintenance. After 3 months of hauling supplies between human colonies, the ship's engines were running rough, and several systems needed attention. Linda had a crew of 25 people, but only 3 were qualified to handle the complex repairs her ship required. Jake Morrison was her chief mechanic, a tall man in his 30s with grease permanently under his fingernails and an amazing ability to fix anything mechanical. Amy Sullivan was younger, just 26, but she had a gift for understanding electrical systems that even Jake respected. Carlos Rivera rounded out the team, a quiet man who specialized in life support and environmental controls. The docking procedure went smoothly. A Xinthian traffic controller guided them into Bay 17, and the ship settled onto the station's docking clamps with barely a shudder. Linda checked the time. It was just after 10 in the morning, ship time. Jake came up to the bridge a few minutes later, carrying his toolbox and a tablet with the maintenance checklist. Amy and Carlos were right behind him. "We should be done in about 6 hours, Captain," Jake said. "The station workshop has all the parts we need already waiting for us. I confirmed it with their supply office this morning." Linda nodded. "Sounds good. You 3 know the drill. Stay together, don't wander into restricted areas, and keep your communicators on. Check in every hour." Jake grinned. "Come on, Captain. We've done this 100 times. What could go wrong?" Those words would come back to haunt Linda later. The 3 mechanics left the ship and made their way through the station's corridors toward the workshop bay. Kelvar 9 was busy, as always, filled with aliens of every shape and size. 4 armed traders from Deneb carried crates of exotic goods. Floating jellyfish-like creatures from the Andromeda sector drifted past, their bodies glowing with soft blue light. A group of furry Betelgeusians argued loudly about cargo prices in their barking language. Jake, Amy, and Carlos had seen it all before. They walked through the crowd without paying much attention, focused on getting to the workshop and starting their repairs. The workshop bay was located in Section 12, a 20-minute walk from where the Meridian Dawn was docked. When they arrived, everything seemed normal. The workshop was a large, open space, filled with equipment, tools, and repair stations. A few other crews were already working on their own projects. A Xinthian supervisor, a creature that looked like a 6-foot-tall praying mantis with shimmering green skin, checked their authorization codes and directed them to Station 7. "Your parts are there," the supervisor said in the clicking, buzzing language that the Xinthians spoke. The translator built into Jake's ear converted the sounds into English. "You may begin work." The 3 humans got started. Jake immediately dove into the engine components they had brought from the ship, while Amy began testing electrical circuits, and Carlos examined the life support filters they needed to replace. The work was familiar and comfortable. They talked while they worked, joking about the terrible food in the ship's mess hall and making plans for their next shore leave. 2 hours passed. Then 3. Jake checked in with Captain Hayes, right on schedule, reporting that everything was going according to plan. They were making good progress and should finish even earlier than expected. That was when the Xinthian security forces arrived. 6 guards in black armor surrounded the workstation. They carried weapons that looked like long rods with glowing blue tips. The supervisor from earlier was with them, along with another Xinthian wearing what looked like official robes. "You 3, stop working immediately," the robed Xinthian said through the translator. "You are under arrest for sabotage and violation of station security protocols." Jake stood up slowly, his hands visible. He knew better than to make sudden moves around armed guards. There must be some mistake. We're just doing routine maintenance on our own ship's equipment. There is no mistake, the Xinthian official said. Our sensors detected illegal tampering with station systems from this location. You will come with us for questioning. Amy stepped forward. That's crazy. We haven't touched anything except our own parts. We haven't even left this workstation. 7. Silence, one of the guards said. You will follow us now, or we will use force. Carlos reached for his communicator to call Captain Hayes, but one of the guards moved faster. The blue rod touched Carlos's arm, and he collapsed to the floor, unconscious. It happened so quickly that Jake and Amy barely had time to react. Anyone else wish to resist? The official asked. Jake and Amy raised their hands. They had no choice. And the 3 humans were quickly restrained with some kind of energy field that locked their wrists together. The guards marched them out of the workshop and into the station's interior corridors. They moved deeper into Kelvar 9, away from the public areas, and into sections that clearly required special authorization. The corridors became narrower and darker. They passed through 3 security checkpoints, each one requiring retinal scans from the guards. After 15 minutes of walking, they reached a heavy door that opened into what looked like a detention block. Jake, Amy, and Carlos were separated. Each was pushed into a different cell. Small rooms with bare metal walls and a single bench. The energy fields around their wrists disappeared, but the cell doors sealed with a hiss of compressed air. Jake immediately went to the door and tried to find any kind of control panel or weak point. But there was nothing. The door was solid and completely smooth. He sat down on the bench and tried to think. This made no sense. They had done nothing wrong. Nothing that could even remotely be considered sabotage. They had been working on their own equipment in an authorized area. Why would the Xinthians arrest them? Hours passed. No one came to explain what was happening. No one brought food or water. Jake tried shouting through the door, but got no response. He wondered if Amy and Carlos were okay, if they were nearby or somewhere else entirely. He wondered if Captain Hayes knew what had happened yet. The message from Captain Hayes reached the destroyer Valiant while it was on patrol near the Outer Rim territories. Captain Gregory Shaw was in his quarters reviewing supply reports when his communication officer knocked on the door. Sir, we have an emergency transmission from a civilian vessel. Priority, code, red. Gregory sat up immediately. Priority red meant someone was in serious danger. He followed the officer to the bridge and listened to Linda Hayes's message. Her voice was calm but tight with controlled anger as she explained the situation. 3 members of her crew had disappeared on Kelvar 9. The station authorities were stonewalling her requests for information. She believed they had been detained illegally. Gregory made his decision in less than 10 seconds. Set course for Kelvar 9. Maximum speed. And get me a connection to Fleet Command. The communications officer looked worried. Sir, that station is outside our authorized patrol zone. We would need permission to enter Xinthian-controlled space. Then we better get that permission quickly, Gregory said. Because we're going anyway. It took 20 minutes to get Admiral Patricia Green on the line. She was a stern woman in her 60s, with short gray hair and eyes that had seen more than enough combat in her career. She listened to Gregory's report without interrupting. You're asking me to authorize a potential confrontation with the Xinthian Consortium over 3 mechanics, she said when he finished. I'm asking you to authorize protection of human citizens who appear to have been kidnapped by a foreign power, Gregory replied. Ma'am, if we let this slide, it sends a message that humans can be grabbed anywhere without consequences. Admiral Green was quiet for a moment. Then she nodded. You're right. I'm authorizing your mission. But Gregory, you need to handle this diplomatically first. Try every peaceful option before things get ugly. Understood, Admiral. And Gregory, one more thing. I'm sending backup. Commander Kevin Brooks and the cruiser Defiant will rendezvous with you in 36 hours. I'm also dispatching the Shadowfin with Agent Nicole Parker aboard. She's Intelligence Division, specializes in alien relations and covert operations. She might be able to find out what's really going on. Thank you, Admiral. Gregory turned to his crew. You heard the orders. Let's move. The Valiant was one of the newer ships in the human fleet, built specifically for speed and maneuverability. She made the journey to Kelvar 9 inches just under 30 hours. Gregory used that time to research everything he could find about the Zynthian Consortium and Kelvar 9 station specifically. What he learned made him uneasy. The Zynthians were merchants first and foremost, but they had a reputation for being ruthless when it came to protecting their business interests. Several reports mentioned disputes with other species over trade practices, patent rights, and technology transfers. The consortium had powerful friends among the older, more established alien civilizations who tended to look down on humanity as newcomers to galactic society. The Valiant arrived at Kelvar 9 and requested docking permission. Gregory put on his dress uniform and prepared to meet with the station authorities. He brought along 6 security personnel, all armed, but instructed to keep weapons holstered unless absolutely necessary. Captain Hayes met him at the docking port. She looked exhausted, with dark circles under her eyes. Thank you for coming, Captain Shaw. I've gotten nowhere with these people. They keep insisting they have no record of my crew. Have you been able to confirm they're actually on the station? Gregory asked. Not officially, but I have. I hired a private investigator, a Trilixian merchant named Vorn, who knows the station well. He found witnesses who saw my crew being taken into custody by Zynthian security forces. They're here somewhere, in a detention area that normal civilians can't access. Gregory nodded. Okay. I'm going to request an official meeting with whoever runs this station. Let's see what they have to say when they're talking to a military officer instead of a civilian captain. The meeting was arranged within 2 hours. Gregory and his security team were escorted through the station to an impressive office complex in the central hub. The corridors here were decorated with expensive artwork from dozens of different worlds. Everything screamed wealth and power. High Administrator Kelrix waited for them in a large conference room. The Zynthian was even more imposing in person than Gregory had expected. Nearly 7 feet tall, with an exoskeleton that shimmered with iridescent colors, Kelrix looked like a praying mantis, designed by someone who wanted to create nightmares. His multifaceted eyes showed no emotion as Gregory and his team entered. Captain Shaw, Kelrix said through his translator. The voice was surprisingly smooth and cultured. Welcome to Kelvar 9. I understand you have some concerns about 3 human civilians. Gregory kept his face neutral. Thank you for seeing me, Administrator. I'm here on behalf of the United Earth Government regarding 3 human citizens who appear to have been detained on your station. Captain Linda Hayes filed a proper request for information about her crew members, and your staff has provided no useful response. I'm here to get answers. Kelrix settled into a chair designed for his alien body structure. Your people were arrested for serious violations of station security. They were caught tampering with critical systems in our repair facility. Such actions cannot be tolerated, as they endanger thousands of lives aboard this station. I'd like to see the evidence of this tampering, Gregory said calmly. The evidence is classified for security reasons. I'd like to speak with the detained individuals. That is not possible at this time. They are undergoing questioning. Then I'd like to know what charges they face, and when they will have access to legal representation. Kelrix's mandibles clicked together in what might have been annoyance. Captain Shaw. This is a Zynthian station, operating under consortium law. Your government has no jurisdiction here. The humans in question will be processed according to our procedures. When that is complete, they will be released or charged formally. Until then, you have no authority to demand anything. Gregory felt his anger rising but kept it under control. Administrator, I'm trying to handle this diplomatically. 3 human citizens have been detained without evidence, without charges, and without access to representation. That's not justice. That's kidnapping. The United Earth government takes a very dim view of its citizens being treated this way. Then perhaps humans should be more careful about following the rules when visiting stations controlled by other species, Kelrick said. His tone suggested the meeting was over. Gregory stood up. I'll be staying on my ship in docking orbit. I expect to hear from you within 24 hours, with a resolution to this situation. If I don't, I'll take further action. You may do as you wish, Captain. But you have no power here. Ended. Gregory and his team left the office. Once they were back in the corridor, one of his security officers spoke quietly. Actually, it went exactly as I expected, Gregory said. He's arrogant and confident that we can't touch him. That's useful information. They returned to the Valiant, where Gregory found 2 new ships had arrived and were taking up positions near his destroyer. The cruiser Defiant was 3 times the size of the Valiant, bristling with weapons and sensor arrays. The Shadowfin was smaller, a sleek intelligence vessel designed for stealth operations. Commander Kevin Brooks contacted him immediately. Captain Shaw, Commander Brooks reporting. Admiral Green filled me in on the situation. What do you need? Right now, I need information, Gregory said. The station administrator is playing games. He won't admit they have our people. Won't show evidence. Won't allow access. We need to find out where they're actually holding Jake Morrison, Amy Sullivan, and Carlos Rivera. And we need to know what the Xinthians really want. I can help with that, a new voice said. A woman appeared on the screen next to Commander Brooks. She was in her early 40s, with sharp features and intelligent eyes. Agent Nicole Parker, Intelligence Division. I've been studying the Xinthian Consortium for 3 years. I have contacts on this station who can provide information that official channels won't. How long will you need? Gregory asked. Give me 12 hours. I'll find your people and figure out what's really going on here. Well, Gregory agreed, and Agent Parker transferred over to the Valiant. She left the ship in civilian clothing, looking like just another merchant or traveler on the busy station. Her security clearance gave her access to equipment that could help her blend in and gather intelligence without being detected. While Parker worked, Gregory reviewed the situation with Commander Brooks. They discussed various scenarios and how to respond to each one. Gregory had a bad feeling about this whole situation. Something about it felt coordinated and deliberate, not like a simple security misunderstanding. His instincts proved correct when Agent Parker returned 10 hours later with disturbing news. I found them, she said, spreading out photos and data on the conference table. They're being held in a secure research facility in the lower levels of the station. It's not a regular detention area. It's a place where the Xinthians conduct industrial research and development. Why would they put arrested saboteurs in a research facility? Gregory asked. Because they're not really arrested for sabotage, Parker said. I talked to 3 different sources, all reliable. The Xinthians have been grabbing human technical personnel for the past year. Gregory scheduled another meeting with Administrator Kelricks, but this time, he brought more than just security personnel. Commander Kevin Brooks came with him, along with a full diplomatic package of evidence that Agent Parker had compiled. The atmosphere in the conference room was different now. Kelricks could see that the humans were no longer asking politely. Administrator, Gregory began. We need to talk honestly about what's happening here. I know you're holding 3 human mechanics in a research facility. I know this isn't the first time the Xinthian Consortium has detained human technical personnel. I have documentation of at least 6 similar incidents over the past year at different stations. Kelricks's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of agitation. You are making serious accusations without proof. I have plenty of proof, Gregory said. He activated a holographic display that showed dates, locations, and names of other humans who had been detained and then quietly released with compensation. Every one of these people was a mechanic, engineer, or technician. Everyone was detained on false charges, questioned about human engineering methods, then released after signing non-disclosure agreements. This is a coordinated intelligence operation, and you're running it from this station. The room was silent for a long moment. Kelrix seemed to be calculating his options. Finally, he spoke. Even if what you say were true, what authority do you have here? This is consortium territory. Your laws do not apply. You're right that this is your territory, Commander Brooks said. But the people you kidnapped are human citizens. That makes it our business. And the consortium signed trade agreements with Earth that specifically protect citizens of both our civilizations from arbitrary detention. You violated those agreements. Kelrix leaned back in his chair. The consortium has many allies in the galactic community, species that have been part of interstellar civilization for thousands of years. Humanity has been among the stars for less than 2 centuries. Do you really think you can threaten us? Gregory smiled, but it was not a friendly expression. I'm not threatening you, Administrator. I'm giving you an opportunity to resolve this situation peacefully. I have 3 demands. First, immediate release of Jake Morrison, Amy Sullivan, and Carlos Rivera with full clearance of all charges. Second, complete disclosure of all intelligence gathered from previous detentions of human personnel. Third, formal charges brought against those responsible for orchestrating these kidnappings. And if I refuse? Kelrix asked. Then things get complicated for you, Gregory said. You have 6 hours to comply with these demands. Kelrix's laugh was a strange buzzing sound. 6 hours? Or what, Captain? Will you attack this station? Start a war over 3 mechanics? I don't think so. Gregory's expression didn't change. Let me explain your situation, Administrator. Right now, Commander Brooks has the cruiser Defiant positioned at a very specific location relative to this station. The Defiant carries advanced electronic warfare systems. With one command, we can disable your main power grid using an electromagnetic pulse calibrated to knock out your systems without harming any living beings. Your station will go dark, and it will take you weeks to repair the damage. Kelrix started to respond, but Gregory continued. That's just the beginning. Agent Parker has been very busy over the past 12 hours. She's already infiltrated your detention facility and mapped out exactly where our people are being held. We have a team ready to extract them by force if necessary. They're already on the station, waiting for my signal. You wouldn't dare, Kelrix said. But his voice had lost some of its confidence. Wouldn't we? Commander Brooks asked. You kidnapped our people. You think we won't take them back? Gregory pulled out another data pad. But the real problem for you, Administrator, is what happens after we leave. You see, I've done something that you probably won't like. I've transmitted all of the evidence about your espionage program to the Galactic Trade Commission. I've also sent copies to every major news network across known space. By now, thousands of journalists are reviewing documents that show the Zynthian Consortium has been systematically kidnapping and interrogating human technical personnel. For the first time, Kelrix showed real emotion. His entire body went rigid. You did what? The story is about to break galaxy-wide, Gregory said calmly. Every species that does business with the consortium is going to know that you can't be trusted. You detain people illegally. You steal technological secrets. You violate trade agreements. Your reputation is going to be destroyed. There's more, Commander Brooks added. Admiral Green has issued a fleet-wide advisory. All human commercial traffic is being rerouted away from Zynthian-controlled space. No human ships will dock at your stations. No human merchants will trade with consortium businesses. That's going to cost you billions in lost revenue. Gregory leaned forward. And finally, we've filed formal complaints with every major trading partner the consortium has. The Trilixian Unity is particularly interested in your activities. They've already contacted us about establishing preferential trade agreements with humanity. I think they see this as an opportunity to undercut your monopoly on several key trade routes. Kelrix sat motionless, processing this information. Everything he had built his career on was collapsing. The humans had outmaneuvered him completely. You can stop all of this, Gregory said quietly. Release our people. Provide the information we requested. Cooperate with the investigation. If you do that, we can work to minimize the damage. We might even be able to keep your name out of the worst of it. But if you continue to resist, if you force us to extract our people by force, then everything falls on you, personally. The silence in the room was heavy. Kelrix's mandibles clicked slowly as he thought. Finally, he spoke. I need to consult with my superiors in the consortium leadership. You have 6 hours, Gregory repeated. Not 1 minute more. The meeting ended. Gregory and Commander Brooks returned to their ships and waited. Parker reported that her extraction team was in position, ready to move on Gregory's command. Everything was prepared. 5 hours and 47 minutes later, Gregory received a transmission. It wasn't from Kelrix. It was from someone much higher in the consortium hierarchy, a senior official named Zathros who spoke for the entire Leadership Council. Captain Shaw, Zathros said, we have reviewed the situation. The actions taken at Kelvar 9 were not authorized by the consortium leadership. Administrator Kelrix exceeded his authority. We are prepared to meet your demands in exchange for your cooperation in managing the public relations aspects of this incident. Gregory had expected this. The consortium was throwing Kelrix under the transport to save themselves. What exactly are you offering? Immediate release of all 3 humans, with full clearance of any charges. Complete disclosure of all previous incidents involving detained human personnel, including compensation for those individuals. And we will conduct an internal investigation into who authorized these operations. Those responsible will face consequences. Not good enough, Gregory said. I want Kelrix removed from his position immediately. I want formal charges filed against everyone involved in the espionage program. And I want a public apology from the consortium, acknowledging that these detentions were illegal. Zathros was quiet for a moment. You drive a hard bargain, Captain. Your people kidnapped our citizens. You're lucky I'm not demanding more. Very well. We agree to your terms. But we need your help containing the story. If this becomes a major scandal, it will damage relations between our species for years. That should have been your concern before you started grabbing our people, Gregory said. But I'll talk to Admiral Green about limiting the public disclosure. We're not interested in starting a war. We just want our people back and assurance this won't happen again. You have our assurance. The program is terminated as of now. 3 hours later, Jake Morrison, Amy Sullivan, and Carlos Rivera were released from detention. Agent Parker and her team escorted them back to the Meridian Dawn, where Captain Hayes was waiting with tears in her eyes. Jake looked tired but unbroken. Good to see you, Captain. Sorry we're late getting back. Hayes laughed and hugged all 3 of them. Don't ever scare me like that again. Gregory met with the mechanics briefly to make sure they were the news about the Zynthian espionage program spread across the galaxy faster than anyone expected. Within hours of Gregory transmitting the evidence, major news networks were running stories about the consortium's illegal detention of human technical personnel. The reaction was swift and severe. The Trilixian Unity, longtime economic rivals of the Zynthians, were the first to respond. Their ambassador to Earth contacted Admiral Green personally to express support for humanity's position and to offer preferential trade agreements. 3 other species followed suit within the next 12 hours. Each one eager to take advantage of the consortium's damaged reputation. The Galactic Trade Commission announced a formal investigation into the allegations. Several member species filed complaints demanding answers from the Zynthian government. Trading partners began suspending contracts and renegotiating terms. The economic impact was immediate and devastating for the consortium. On Kelvar 9, Administrator Kelrix watched his world collapse. His superiors in the consortium leadership contacted him with furious messages, demanding to know why he had allowed this situation to spiral out of control. They wanted answers, explanations, and most importantly, someone to blame. Kelrix tried to explain that he had been following orders, that the espionage program had been approved at the highest levels of consortium leadership. But his superiors were already distancing themselves from him. They claimed no knowledge of any systematic detention program. They insisted that Kelrix had acted independently and exceeded his authority. Meanwhile, Jake Morrison, Amy Sullivan, and Carlos Rivera were safe aboard the Meridian Dawn. Captain Hayes had immediately scheduled departure from Kelvar 9, wanting to get her crew as far away from the station as possible. But Gregory asked her to wait. "I know you want to leave," he told her. "But we need your crew to give statements about what happened. Their testimony will be crucial for the investigation." Hayes agreed reluctantly. Jake and the others spent several hours being interviewed by Agent Parker and her team. They described everything that had happened from the moment they were arrested to their release. The interrogations they had endured, the questions they were asked, the equipment and facilities they had seen. "They were desperate to understand how we work," Jake explained. "They showed me recordings of human mechanics fixing different problems. They asked me to explain the thought process behind each repair. When I told them it was based on experience and intuition, they didn't believe me. They thought I was hiding some kind of secret technique or formula." Amy nodded. "They kept asking about our training programs. They wanted to know if there were special schools where humans learned these skills. I tried to explain that it takes years of hands-on experience, that you learn by doing and making mistakes. But they wanted a shortcut, a way to program their systems to think like we do." Carlos added, "The weird thing was, they seemed genuinely confused. Like they couldn't understand why we wouldn't just tell them everything. They offered us money, better positions, anything we wanted. They couldn't comprehend that some knowledge can't be bought or stolen. It has to be earned through experience." Gregory listened to all of this and filed detailed reports to Admiral Green. The evidence was damning. The consortium had been running a coordinated program to steal human technological advantages through illegal detention and interrogation. 2 days after the mechanics were released, the consortium made a public announcement. Administrator Kelrix had been removed from his position and was under investigation for criminal actions. The consortium acknowledged that unauthorized detentions had occurred at several stations and apologized to the human government and all affected individuals. They announced compensation packages for everyone who had been detained, along with formal clearance of all charges. They also promised to implement new oversight procedures to prevent similar incidents in the future. But the damage to their reputation was already done. Human commercial traffic continued to avoid Xinthian-controlled space. Trade partners remained cautious, demanding additional guarantees and protections before resuming normal business relationships. The consortium's monopoly on several key trade routes was broken as other species moved in to fill the gap. Admiral Green used this opportunity to push for changes in how humanity operated in galactic space. She argued that the incident at Kelvar 9 proved that humans needed to be more self-reliant and better able to protect their own interests. Earth's government agreed. They allocated funding for a new program to establish human-controlled trade stations in key locations. They expanded the Navy's mandate to include protection of civilian vessels in contested or dangerous areas. They created a specialized intelligence division focused on monitoring threats to human citizens abroad. Gregory received a promotion to Commodore and was given command of a new task force dedicated to protecting human interests in frontier space. Commander Brooks became his second in command. Agent Parker was offered a position heading the new intelligence division, which she accepted. Captain Hayes and her crew returned to their normal trade routes, but with one significant change. Earth's government issued them a letter of marque, a legal document authorizing the Meridian Dawn to act as an auxiliary military vessel if needed. They were still a commercial freighter, but they now had official backing and authority. Jake Morrison, Amy Sullivan, and Carlos Rivera became minor celebrities. News organizations wanted interviews. Other mechanics and engineers wanted to know what they had experienced. They handled the attention with good humor, always emphasizing that they had just been doing their jobs when everything went wrong. "We're not heroes," Jake said in one interview. "We just got caught in a bad situation and waited for the cavalry to arrive. The real heroes are Captain Shaw and his crew, who came to get us out." But to many humans, the three mechanics represented something important. They had been targeted specifically because of human skills and abilities. They had refused to give up information, even under pressure. and their situation had prompted a strong response from their government, showing that humanity would protect its own. The incident changed how other species viewed humanity. Before Kelvar 9, many alien civilizations had seen humans as newcomers to galactic society, a young species still finding its place among the stars. After Kelvar 9, they saw humans as a power to be respected, a civilization that would respond forcefully to threats against its citizens. 3 months after the incident, Gregory returned to Kelvar 9 as part of his new duties. The station looked the same from the outside, but everything had changed. A new administrator ran things now, a Xinthian named Vorix, who had built a reputation for fairness and transparency. Vorix met with Gregory personally. "Commodore Shaw, welcome back to Kelvar 9. I hope this visit will be more pleasant than your last one." "That's up to you, Administrator," Gregory said. "I'm here to discuss establishing a human commercial office on the station." Vorix's mandibles clicked in what Gregory had learned was the Xinthian equivalent of a smile. "I was hoping you would say that. We would be honored to host a human presence on Kelvar 9. I believe it would benefit both our peoples." They spent several hours negotiating terms. Vorix was genuinely apologetic about what had happened, and eager to rebuild the relationship between the consortium and humanity. He understood that trust had been broken, and would take time to restore. 6 months after the Kelvar 9 incident, the changes to humanity's position in the galaxy were dramatic and far-reaching. What had started as a rescue mission for 3 detained mechanics had transformed into a major shift in galactic politics and economics. Admiral Green stood in front of the Earth Council, presenting her report on the current state of human expansion into space. The council members listened carefully as she outlined everything that had changed. "We now have operational trade stations in 8 key sectors," she explained. "Each station is fully human-controlled and provides services to our commercial vessels without depending on alien infrastructure. We've reduced our reliance on consortium facilities by 60%, and that number is growing every month." One of the council members spoke up. "What about the cost? These stations are expensive to build and maintain." RD, NB, RD. "They're paying for themselves faster than projected," Green replied. "Other species want to use our facilities because they trust our fairness and transparency. We're actually making a profit in 5 of the 8 locations." Another council member asked about military expansion. "Are we overextending ourselves?" "We've increased the fleet size significantly. We've expanded strategically," Green said. "Every new ship serves a specific purpose. The task forces we've created are focused on protecting our citizens and our interests. We're not looking to start conflicts, but we're making it clear that there are consequences for threatening humanity." The Council approved her recommendations for continued expansion. Earth's government was committed to ensuring that what happened at Kelvar 9 would never happen again. Humans would be able to protect themselves and wouldn't need to depend entirely on the goodwill of alien civilizations. Captain Linda Hayes noticed the changes during her regular trading runs. Stations that had previously been controlled by aliens now had human sections, or were entirely human-operated. Security was tighter, with armed human personnel visible at key locations. Other species treated human merchants with noticeably more respect than before. Her ship, the Meridian Dawn, had become well known throughout several sectors. Other captains knew her as the woman whose crew had been kidnapped and whose government had responded with overwhelming force. Some saw her as a symbol of human determination and resilience. Hayes didn't particularly want to be a symbol of anything. She just wanted to run her ship and make an honest living. But she understood that sometimes people needed symbols, needed stories to remind them of their values and principles. Jake Morrison, Amy Sullivan, and Carlos Rivera continued working on the Meridian Dawn. They had been offered positions with much higher pay at various companies and institutions. Universities wanted them to teach. Defense contractors wanted them to develop training programs. But all 3 had chosen to stay where they were. "This is home," Jake explained when asked why he didn't take one of the lucrative offers. "Captain Hayes gave me a chance when I was just starting out. The crew here is family. I'm not leaving family for money. The three mechanics had used their experience to improve safety procedures for human technical personnel working abroad. They consulted with the new intelligence division, helping to develop training programs that taught people what to do if they were detained by alien authorities. Their input helped create protocols that protected human workers without starting unnecessary conflicts. Agent Nicole Parker's intelligence division had grown rapidly. She now had operatives at every major trading hub and outpost in known space. They monitored situations that could threaten human interests and provided early warning of potential problems. Parker had also established a network of contacts among other species, aliens who believed in fair dealing and honest business practices. These contacts provided valuable information about political developments and economic trends. Some, like the Trilixian merchant Vorn, who had helped locate the detained mechanics, had become genuine friends and allies. The relationship between humanity and the Xinthian Consortium remained complicated. The Consortium had paid all the reparations and made all the required reforms. New leadership had taken over at multiple levels, and they claimed to be committed to preventing future abuses. But trust was slow to return. Many humans remembered what had happened and were cautious about dealing with Xinthian businesses. Some refused entirely, choosing to take their trade elsewhere, even if it cost more or was less convenient. The Consortium understood this and was working hard to rebuild their reputation. They had opened their facilities to independent inspectors. They had implemented transparent oversight procedures. They were going above and beyond what was required, trying to prove that they had changed. Commodore Gregory Shaw continued his work, protecting human interests across multiple sectors. His task force had prevented 2 more attempted detentions of human personnel, both times appearing before any actual kidnapping could occur. The presence of armed human warships had a powerful deterrent effect. Shaw had become known throughout the fleet as someone who got results. He was fair and diplomatic when possible, but absolutely ruthless when protecting human lives. Other species learned quickly that threatening humans was a bad idea when Shaw was in the area. He remained in contact with Captain Hayes and checked in regularly with Jake, Amy, and Carlos. He considered them friends now, not just people he had rescued. They occasionally met for dinner, when their paths crossed, sharing stories and catching up on news. One evening, about a year after the Kelvar 9 incident, they all gathered at a restaurant on one of the new human trade stations. The conversation eventually turned to how much things had changed. "Remember when we were basically begging the Xinthians for information about our own people?" Hayes said. "Now they're begging us to use their facilities." Jake laughed. "Funny how that works. All it took was you folks showing up with warships and threatening to shut down their entire station." "We didn't actually threaten to shut it down," Shaw corrected with a smile. "We just made it clear that we could if we wanted to." "There's a difference. A small difference," Commander Brooks added. He had been promoted to captain and now commanded his own ship, but remained part of Shaw's task force. Amy raised her glass. "Here's to small differences and big responses. And to not getting kidnapped again." Do. They all drank to that. Parker, who had joined them for dinner, shared some interesting news. "I've been talking to my contacts in consortium space. Apparently, what happened at Kelvar 9 has had effects we didn't anticipate. Other species who were being similarly exploited by the consortium are starting to speak up. There's talk of forming a coalition to push for better protections and fairer trade practices." "That's good news," Shaw said. "If other species start demanding the same standards we do, it raises everyone up." "Exactly," Parker agreed. "The galaxy is changing." Humanity's strong response to the kidnappings showed that young civilizations don't have to just accept whatever the older powers dish out. We can stand up for ourselves and make them respect us. Carlos, who had been quiet during most of the conversation, spoke up. "You know what I think is really interesting? The Xinthians wanted to steal our knowledge, our techniques, our way of thinking, but they couldn't. Not because we wouldn't tell them, but because what they wanted can't be stolen. It has to be earned. That's true for a lot of things," Hayes said thoughtfully. Respect, trust, reputation. You can't take those things from someone else. You have to build them yourself through your actions. Over time, Jake nodded. Which is what we're doing as a species, I guess. Building our reputation one situation at a time, showing the galaxy who we are and what we stand for. The changes that began at Kelvar 9 continued to ripple outward across the galaxy. 2 years after the incident, humanity had firmly established itself as a major power in galactic affairs. The days when humans were seen as inexperienced, newcomers were over. Captain Linda Hayes guided the Meridian Dawn toward a new human outpost in the Orion sector. This was the 15th station that Earth had built, and it was the largest one yet. The massive structure gleamed against the darkness of space, a testament to how quickly humanity was expanding its presence among the stars. She had been asked to participate in the station's opening ceremony, along with Jake Morrison, Amy Sullivan, and Carlos Rivera. Their story had become part of human history, a reminder of why this expansion was necessary. The ceremony was attended by officials from Earth, military leaders, and representatives from several alien species. Even some Xinthians were present, including former Administrator Vorix from Kelvar 9, who had worked hard to rebuild trust between his people and humanity. Admiral Green gave the keynote speech. She was older now, planning to retire within the year, but her voice was still strong and commanding. 2 years ago, 3 human mechanics were kidnapped and held illegally on an alien station. Their captors thought they could steal human knowledge and ingenuity through force and intimidation. They were wrong. What they learned instead is that humanity protects its own, and there's always a price for forgetting that lesson. The crowd applauded. Green continued. Those 3 mechanics, who are here with us today, became symbols of something important. They represented every human working in space, trying to make an honest living among the stars. When they were threatened, we responded not just to save 3 people, but to establish a principle. And no one, anywhere in this galaxy, gets to violate those principles without facing consequences. More applause. Green gestured to the station behind her. This outpost, and the 14 others like it, exist because we learned from that incident. We can't depend entirely on the goodwill of others. We need our own infrastructure, our own security, our own power base. Not to threaten anyone, but to ensure we can protect ourselves and help others who need protection. She called Hayes and her 3 mechanics to the stage. They stood there, somewhat uncomfortably, not used to being in the spotlight. Captain Hayes, your quick thinking and determination saved your crew. Jake Morrison, Amy Sullivan, Carlos Rivera. Your refusal to surrender human knowledge under pressure showed the strength of character that defines our species. You didn't plan to become heroes, but that's often how heroism works. You just did what was right, and others followed your example. After the ceremony, there was a reception where people could meet and talk. Hayes found herself surrounded by young people, asking questions about life as a commercial captain. Jake, Amy, and Carlos were similarly mobbed by engineering students and young mechanics wanting advice. It's not that complicated, Jake told one group. You make mistakes and figure out how to fix them. You spend years getting your hands dirty and building up experience. There's no shortcut, no secret formula, just hard work and determination. One student asked, "Is it true that the Xinthians really thought they could program computers to think like human mechanics?" "That's what they wanted," Amy answered. "They couldn't understand that intuition and creativity come from experience, not programming. You can't reduce years of hands-on work to an algorithm." 1. Across the room, Commodore Shaw was talking with Vorix. The Xinthian administrator had brought gifts and greetings from the new consortium leadership. "Things have changed significantly in our space," Vorix said. "The reforms we implemented after the Kelvar 9 incident have spread throughout the consortium. We've adopted many human practices regarding transparency and fairness. Our reputation is slowly recovering." "That's good to hear," Shaw replied. Change is difficult, but necessary sometimes. Indeed. I wanted to thank you personally, Commodore. What you did was difficult and could have gone very wrong. But you gave us an opportunity to fix our mistakes and become better. Not all species would have done that. Shaw nodded. We didn't want war. We just wanted justice and assurance it wouldn't happen again. You've worked hard to provide both. Agent Parker joined their conversation. Her intelligence division had grown to over 200 personnel spread across the galaxy. She looked tired, but satisfied. I've been analyzing the broader effects of the Kelvar 9 incident, she said. The ripples are still spreading. Smaller species are demanding better treatment from the established powers. Several have formed mutual defense pacts. The whole structure of galactic politics is shifting toward more equality and less domination by the old civilizations. Is that a good thing? Vorix asked. I think so, Parker said. A galaxy where power is more balanced and distributed is probably more stable than one where a few old species control everything. Change is uncomfortable, but it's often necessary. Later that evening, Hayes gathered her crew together in a quiet corner of the station. They looked out through a viewport at the stars beyond. 2 years ago, we were just trying to get our ship repaired, she said quietly. Now we're part of history. It's strange how things work out. Do you regret it? Jake asked. All the attention? The changes to our lives? Hayes thought about it. No. I regret that you three had to go through being detained. But everything that came after, all the changes that happened because of it, those were necessary. Humanity needed to establish itself. We needed to show the galaxy that we wouldn't be pushed around. Carlos looked at the station around them. And now we have all this. Our own stations, our own fleet, our own infrastructure. We're not dependent on anyone else anymore. We're still part of the galactic community, Amy pointed out. We still trade and work with other species. We're just doing it from a position of strength and equality now instead of weakness. Jake smiled. You know what the best part is? We're still just mechanics. We still fix ships and solve problems. All this history and politics stuff happens around us. But we keep doing what we're good at. Hayes laughed. That's true. And tomorrow morning, you three are going to fix the environmental systems on Deck 7 because they're running loud and annoying me. Yes, Captain, they said in unison. The conversation turned to lighter topics, stories about recent jobs and plans for shore leave. They were ordinary people who had been caught up in extraordinary events. But at their core, they remained who they had always been. Hardworking, loyal, and good at what they did. That was the real strength of humanity, Hayes thought. Not the warships, or the stations, or the political maneuvering. It was the ordinary people who kept doing their jobs well, who supported each other, who refused to give up or give in when things got difficult. Across the galaxy, millions of humans were doing exactly that. Working on ships, building stations, exploring new worlds, making deals, solving problems, each one contributing to humanity's growing presence among the stars. The Kelvar 9 incident had taught the galaxy an important lesson about humanity. But it had also taught humans something about themselves. They were stronger than they realized, more capable than they knew. And when they stood together, there was very little they couldn't accomplish. As the opening ceremony for the new station continued around them, Hayes and her crew watched the stars and thought about the future. It looked bright, full of possibility and promise. There would be challenges ahead, certainly. Problems to solve, conflicts to navigate, difficulties to overcome. But humanity had proven it could handle those challenges. They had the skills, the determination, and the courage to face whatever came next. Jake broke the comfortable silence. You know, 2 years ago I was just worried about fixing our engines. Now people write about me in history books. It's weird. Get used to it, Amy said with a grin. We're famous now. We're the mechanics who couldn't be broken. The ones who stood up to alien interrogation and refused to give away human secrets. I didn't refuse anything, Carlos said. I just told them the truth. There aren't any secrets to give away. Everything we know came from years of experience and hard work. That's the secret they couldn't understand, Hayes said. They wanted a shortcut, an easy answer. They couldn't accept that some things have to be earned the hard way. The conversation was interrupted by an announcement over the station's communication system. Commodore Shaw was calling all ceremony participants to the main hall for final remarks. They made their way through the crowded corridors, nodding to people who recognized them and stopped to shake hands or ask for autographs. It still felt strange to be treated like celebrities, but they were getting used to it. Shaw's final remarks were brief and to the point. This station represents humanity's commitment to being active participants in galactic affairs, not just visitors or guests. We built this with our own hands, our own resources, our own determination. And we'll continue building, growing, and establishing ourselves among the stars. Because that's what humans do. We don't wait for permission or acceptance. We earn our place through our actions. The crowd erupted in applause. Hayes looked at her crew and saw the pride in their faces. They had been part of starting this, part of the chain of events that led to humanity's expansion and growing confidence. As people began to disperse after the ceremony, heading to their quarters or ships, Hayes gathered her crew one more time. "Tomorrow we get back to work," she said. "We've got cargo to deliver and a schedule to keep. This has been nice, being honored and recognized. But our real job is out there, keeping the Meridian Dawn running and serving our clients." "Sounds good to me," Jake said. "I've had enough of ceremonies and speeches. I'm ready to get my hands dirty again, with some honest engine work." Amy and Carlos agreed. They were mechanics, not politicians or heroes. They were happiest when working with tools and solving practical problems. The next morning, the Meridian Dawn departed the new station and continued its route through the Orion sector. Life returned to normal, or as normal as it could be given their fame. But on their ship, in the engine room, and the workshops, things were exactly as they had always been. Jake worked on a stubborn fuel injector, using techniques he had learned over 20 years of experience. Amy traced electrical circuits, finding and fixing problems through a combination of knowledge and intuition. Carlos monitored life support systems, making tiny adjustments that kept everything running smoothly. This was what the Xinthians had wanted to steal, Hayes thought as she watched her crew work. This skill, this expertise, this ability to solve problems creatively and efficiently. But you couldn't steal it because it wasn't a thing to be taken. It was part of who these people were, built up over years of dedication and practice. And it was this same quality, multiplied across millions of humans throughout the galaxy, that made humanity strong. Not their weapons or their stations or their wealth, their people. Their ordinary, hard-working, determined people who kept doing their jobs well no matter what challenges they faced. The galaxy had learned that lesson at Kelvar 9. They had learned that you couldn't imprison human spirit, couldn't steal human ingenuity, couldn't break human determination. And there was always a cost for trying. As the Meridian Dawn jumped to faster-than-light speed and left the station behind, Hayes smiled. The future was bright, and humanity was ready for it. They would keep building, keep growing, keep proving themselves among the stars. And if anyone else tried to imprison humans or steal from them, well, they would learn the same lesson the Xinthians had learned. There's always a cost, and humanity always collects. The dinner continued with lighter conversation and laughter. But underneath the casual atmosphere, there was a shared understanding among everyone at the table. They had all played roles in something important, a turning point in humanity's relationship with the rest of the galaxy. What had started as a routine maintenance stop had become a demonstration of human values and capabilities. It showed that humans would protect their own, that they couldn't be pushed around or intimidated, and that they brought something unique to galactic civilization. As the evening wound down and they prepared to return to their respective ships and duties, Shaw offered one final thought. A year ago, 3 mechanics got grabbed by aliens who thought they could steal human ingenuity. Instead, those aliens learned that you can't imprison what makes humans special: our creativity, our determination, our loyalty to each other. Those things can't be locked away in a detention cell or extracted through interrogation. They're part of who we are. Number 4. We have the Rest Sea Army. He looked around the table at the people who had become his friends through this experience. And that's something the whole galaxy is starting to understand. What Kelrix did was wrong, Vorix said. It violated every principle we claim to stand for. The consortium has always prided itself on fair dealing and honest business practices. He damaged that reputation. Perhaps permanently. Trust can be rebuilt, Gregory said. But it requires consistent action over time. Words aren't enough. I understand. We will prove ourselves through our actions. The meeting ended with an agreement. Kelvar 9 would host a human commercial office that would provide services to human ships and merchants. Human security personnel would be stationed on the station to protect human interests. And most importantly, the station would operate under a joint oversight committee that included both Xinthian and human representatives. It was a small step, but it represented a significant shift in how humans operated in galactic space. They were no longer just visitors dependent on the goodwill of other species. They were establishing their own presence, their own infrastructure, their own power base, and to debrief them on what they had experienced. Jake explained that the Xinthians had been obsessed with understanding human repair techniques. They kept asking me to explain how I fix things, Jake said. They wanted formulas, procedures, step-by-step instructions. I kept telling them it doesn't work like that. When you've been fixing engines for 20 years, you just know what's wrong. You hear a sound that's not quite right. Or you feel a vibration that shouldn't be there. It's intuition built on experience. They couldn't accept that. They wanted to program their computers to work like human mechanics, Amy added. But you can't program intuition. You can't teach creativity through algorithms. Carlos nodded. They got really frustrated when we couldn't give them what they wanted. I think they were starting to realize they had made a big mistake, detaining us. Gregory smiled. They definitely made a mistake. And they're going to pay for it. At least 6 other incidents at different stations. Always mechanics, engineers, or technicians. The victims get detained on false charges, questioned extensively about human repair methods and engineering practices. Then released with compensation payments and forced to sign non-disclosure agreements. Gregory felt cold anger settle into his stomach. They're conducting espionage. Industrial espionage. Yes. The Xinthians are fascinated by human engineering because we do things they consider impossible. We fix complex systems with improvised solutions. We repair equipment using parts that technically shouldn't work together. Our mechanics can diagnose problems by sound or feel in ways that their computer systems can't match. They want to understand how we do it and replicate those abilities. Commander Brooks leaned forward. So this was planned. They specifically targeted Hayes's mechanics. Node 2. Commander Brooks leaned forward side-lime. Parker nodded. I believe so. And here's the thing that worries me most. My sources say the 3 humans are fine physically, but the Xinthians are getting frustrated. Apparently, Jake Morrison keeps telling them that human engineering skill can't be taught through interrogation. It comes from experience and intuition. The Xinthians don't accept that answer. They think he's hiding secrets. Gregory made his decision. All right. No more playing nice. It's time to show Administrator Kelrix that there are consequences for kidnapping human citizens. Back on the Meridian Dawn, Linda was starting to worry. Jake's last check-in had been at hour 3. It was now hour 7. And she had heard nothing. She tried calling his communicator, but got no response. She tried Amy's and Carlos's, with the same result. Linda immediately contacted the station authority office and asked about her crew. The Xinthian, who answered her call, was polite, but unhelpful. "We have no record of any humans in our detention facilities," the alien said. "Perhaps they are still working. The workshops are very large. Communication signals do not always work well in that area." Linda did not believe that for a second. She had been a ship captain for 15 years and had dealt with bureaucratic runarounds before. Something was very wrong. She sent an emergency transmission to Earth and to the nearest human military vessel. Then began making calls to every contact she had on the station. She needed to find out what had happened to her people, and she needed to do it fast.